Good afternoon, and welcome everyone to another of the Center for Humanities Research Colloquia. I'm Sylvester Johnson. I direct the Center for Humanities. I want to thank you for joining us today. I wish to thank Joe Fort, who directs the Athenaeum, the digital humanities hub at Virginia Tech. He is helping us to produce our content. And also Dominic Francesca, the business manager for the Center for Humanities. Today, we are joined by Dr. Koeun Choi. Dr. Choi is an assistant professor of human development and family science at Virginia Tech. She directs the Cognitive Developmental Science Lab, and her research focuses on cognitive and contextual factors that influence children's learning from technology. And among her goals is supporting children's active learning through the use of technology. Choi's involvement in interdisciplinary research at Virginia Tech has covered a diverse set of topics on children and emerging technologies, including eye tracking experiments that examine the impact of mobile media on visual attention, the collection of behavioral and neuroimaging data, which investigates how children learn with humanoid robots. And she also studies and explores the link between family stress and early screen time. So we're very delighted to have you with us, Dr. Choi. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Dr. Choi, you can go ahead and begin your screen share. She's going to present her work on her research, after which we will have a brief time for a Q&A from our audience. So we welcome any comments and questions that you might offer at the end of the presentation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Koeun Choi, and thank you, Sylvester, for the nice introduction. I'm assistant professor in the Department of Human Development and Family Science, and today I'm excited to present work with my collaborators on how we perceive and learn from robots. Oops. Okay. So technological innovation has broadened the range of information sources we can use to access, seek out, and learn information. So now we get information not only from other people, but also digital technology such as smartphone, tablets, and laptop. Especially interactive digital technology that works with users' participation have become prevalent in our daily lives. So according to recent nationally representative surveys, 96% of US adults, a vast majority of adults in the United States, own a type of cell phone, and 80% of them actually own a smartphone. And this trend is not unique to adults. So about 98% of US children under age 8 have access to some form of mobile media, such as smartphones and tablets, within their homes. So, and with the rapid development of robots and artificial intelligence technologies, intelligent robots are also entering into our lives. And which makes our technological landscape more complex and interesting. So here is an intriguing and important question. Would interactivity offered by these technological sources increase or decrease users' information seeking and learning from technology? I study young children, and research with children suggests that learning from technology is not an easy task. So learning from screens, for example, is actually a quite challenging task that requires experiences and set of cognitive skills. So today, I will briefly introduce my earlier work on interactive media and then present some preliminary findings related to robots. So my earlier work examined how interactivity influenced children's learning from screens using touchscreen tablets. So in this work, we focus on young children, particularly toddlers, as evidence from more than a decade of research has demonstrated that toddlers were less likely to transfer learning to real-life problems from video compared to in-person demonstrations. So the way that we study the impact of interactivity in this study was by using a kind of hide and seek game displayed on a tablet. So we were interested in how children learn information from screens and apply that information to a different context. So to study this transfer of learning, we use the touch screen to display hiding events and then use a corresponding felt board for search events to measure children's transfer of learning. So first, we did training to highlight the correspondence between the tablet and a felt board. And then for testing, children were asked to watch hiding events on the tablet and then search for a hidden object on a corresponding felt board. So, and our critical between subject design varied how the video was proceeded. So, in the non-interactive condition, children were asked to watch the video without interacting. In the general interactive condition, children were asked to touch anywhere on the screen. So if the interactivity increased children's arousal and excitement by the engagement with through the engagement with the screen, then we would expect that children in the general interactive group would show a better performance than their peers in the non-interactive group. And lastly, we had the specific interactive condition, and children were asked to touch the specific area on the screen, which was the teddy bear in this case, and the teddy bear was the target object to be hidden. So if the interactivity itself is sufficient to support learning, we would expect that both general interactive and specific interactive condition would help children to learn from screens. However, if interactivity should be used to increase attention to the most important information on the screen, we would expect that the performance would be higher in the specific interactive group compared to the rest of the conditions. So we recruited 75 toddlers and then randomly assigned them to one of the three conditions. And here we looked at toddlers' correct searches on y-axis. So there were 4 trials, and then we counted the number of correct searches on those trials. And then we break down the child age into 3 groups. Then I'm going to present data from the non-interactive group first, where children were asked to watch the video without interacting. And consistent with prior work, toddlers' performance in the non-interactive condition improved with age. So if we look at the youngest group, the blue bar here, younger children were less successful at transferring information from screen to real life problems compared to older children. And the critical question here is, did interactivity help transfer? The green line indicates the chance level. And here, as you can see, the youngest group's performance was not above chance in the non-interactive group. And when we look at the general interactive group, children in this group was actually not that different from children in the non-interactive group. So the pattern of the results was not significantly different, so suggesting that the general interactivity is not that helpful in supporting children's transfer from video. And for the specific interactive condition, we were asked, we asked children to touch the specific part of the screen, and it did improve younger children's learning. So if you compare the blue bars in the non-interactive and specific interactive conditions, you can see that the children in the specific interactive group performed better than children in the non-interactive group. So this suggests that interactivity that is designed to guide children's attention to the most important information on the screen seems to support children's learning. But on the other hand, when we look at the older toddlers, the effect of the specific interactivity was not there and actually reversed. So the specific interactivity seems to help younger children, but not the older toddlers. So here is a quick summary of the findings from this initial study. So through this study, we learned that interactive touchscreens helps learning for younger toddlers because we found that children in the specific interactive condition perform better in the non-interactive condition, at least for younger toddlers. And the interactive touchscreens may support children's selective attention because we found that the children's performance in the specific interactive condition was better than that in the non-interactive condition, but not the general interactive condition. So um, um, so that's what we found. And in another study, we also looked at toddlers' naturalistic exposure to interactive media. And then we looked at how their exposure to interactive media at home is related to their learning measured in the lab. And we found that children's experiences with interactive media, but not the non-interactive media such as television, predicted toddlers' transfer from video observed in the laboratory. So we found the link between home environment and performance in the lab, but this link was found only for the interactive media, but not the not the non-interactive media. So this study provides further evidence that interactive media could be helpful for children's learning, and experience with interactive media may help children to think that screen can be useful and reliable sources for information, especially when these screens provide a appropriate and contingent response to children's behavior. So indeed, in addition to tap-to-play interactivity that I just described, several studies found that socially contingent interactions offered by video chat can improve children's learning from screens. So toddlers learn better from a video when on-screen partner respond to a child in a socially adaptive and relevant way. So, but if you think about human-like robots provide new opportunities for learners to engage in adaptive and reciprocal social interactions with technology. So such characteristics place human-like robots in a unique position on a spectrum of various technological information sources. So this is the image of a robot called Pepper. Um, and human-like robots have potential to elicit positive emotions and support learning through socially adaptive exchanges with learners. But at the same time, these robots may trigger psychological difficulties in acceptance of artificial but human-like objects, so referred to as an uncanny valley. So that is when machines become more like human, they are perceived as more attractive. But when robots become too human-like, humans start to express negative emotional reactions and processing those robots as creepy and unattractive. So these characteristics present both opportunities and challenges for a learner. So it is important to understand how learners perceive and learn from robots and how those factors are related. So in this study, we ask two research questions focusing on adults with the plan to continue this study and extend this study to young children. The first question is, how do adults perceive human-like robots? And the second question is, how do adults learn from human-like robots? So today I'm going to present some preliminary data, and we are continuing data collection and analysis now, but so far we have 65 adult participants recruited through Amazon MTurk, Mechanical Turk, to participate in this online experiment. So to address the first question on robot perception, we created morphed images using a human face and a robot face. And these two faces, we created them using 4 different child images and 4 different robot images, respectively. Then we systematically varied the robot ratio of stimuli by increasing a step of 10%. So robot ratio 0% to 100%. So for example, if you look at the first image here, we use the human image only. So that's a human 100% and the robot 0%. And if you look at the bottom, um, right, human 0%, robot 100%, and that one we only use the robot image and we didn't incorporate the human image to create this morphed image. And in between, we vary the ratio to sort of systematically examine um, um, the the proportion of human versus robot images on participants' perception. So after presenting these images one at a time, we asked participants to judge whether they think each image is either a human face or a robot face, and then whether they like each of the images or not. And here we looked at how participants perceived each image as a human face or a robot face. So y-axis here represents the percent of participants who perceived image as a human face. And x-axis represent robot ratio of the stimuli, which is increased by 10%. So 0% means 100% human face and no robot face was used to create this image. And the 100% means 100% robot face and no human face was used to create this image. And 50% morphed image is we use 50% human and 50% robot, half and half. And here is how the participant responded. So participants were generally accurate in judging their faces for 100% and 0%. So if you look at the 0% on the far left, so when no robot image was used to create this morphed image, nearly all participants judged the image as human. And if you look at the 100%, they didn't they didn't judge it as a human. So participants were pretty accurate in making this judgment. But if you look at the ambiguous images, 40%, 60%, 70%, there were a tendency to perceive them as more like a robot face than human faces. And next question that we ask is related to participants liking, so whether they liked each image. And so y-axis is the percentage of participants who reported that they like each image. And then x-axis is the same as the one that I presented before. So participants generally like the images with lower robot ratio. So if it look more like a human, they liked those images better than the one that look more like robots. But then the percentage dropped as the robot ratio increased. So critically, we found a drop around 60 to 80%, indicating that affinity decrease around these ratio. So the general pattern of this figure is consistent with prior research examining the uncanny valley phenomenon. So there appears to be a threshold where participants start to express negative emotional reactions to robots, reporting those faces as not likable. And our second question was how adults learn from human-like robots. So here we looked at whether participants selectively choose to learn from either human or a robot informant. So first, participant had 4 pre-test trials where they had to figure out the labels for unfamiliar objects. So we present unfamiliar objects and ask participants to figure out the name referring to either human or robot. So participants were first asked to choose who they want to ask for help in figuring out the labels for those objects. So they were asked to choose either human or robot to gain information. And next, participants watched 4 videos, including human and robot informants and novel objects. And the human and robot provided answers to the same question, but their answers were conflicting answers. So participants were after watching these videos, participants were then asked to endorse one of these questions, one of these answers. So in the pre-test trials, we wanted to see how participants ask questions and learn from either human or robot without any prior information about these informants. And this pre-test trial was followed by 4 accuracy trials. So here we presented familiar objects like a spoon or duck that we all know, their labels. And here we vary the accuracy of the informants. So for the half of the participant, the robot informant was 100% accurate. And then the remaining half of the participant, the human was 0% accurate, whereas the robot was 100% accurate. So that is the half of the participants saw human name all the object accurately and robot naming the same object inaccurately. And the remaining half saw the reverse arrangement. So the following the accuracy trial, participants watched 4 videos, including new novel objects. And here, the human and robot informants again provided conflicting answers to the same question. And participants were asked to choose who they want to ask for information and then endorse one of those answers. So in the post-test trial, we wanted to see whether participants learning from the human and robot informants changed after getting information about their accuracy. So here we looked at the participants' performance on the pre-test trial where they didn't get any information about each informant's accuracy, and we just asked them to pick who they want to learn from and which answer that they endorse. And here, y-axis is how many times participants choose the human over robot out of the 4 trials. So the higher number indicates the more time that they picked human over the robot. And x-axis here is the question type. So the ask question was used to ask participants to choose who to ask for information. And then the endorse question was used so that participant can choose one of the labels. And the dotted line here represents chance level, which was 2. And we found that both ask and endorse questions, adults were more likely to seek out information from human and also more likely to endorse answers from the human compared to robot. So, and then we look at the post-test following the accuracy trials. So after they learn that humans are accurate or robots are accurate, would participant use that accuracy cue to change their learning? So that was the question we asked. And here again, x-axis is ask and endorse questions. And the y-axis here is a little bit different from the previous figure. So here y-axis, we look at the number of correct trials. So for example, if the participant saw evidence that the human is always accurate and robot is always wrong, then we're expected to see that participants will ask human, the accurate informant, more questions, and then they will endorse humans' answers. And indeed, that's what we found. So after having evidence that human is accurate, always accurate, and robot is always wrong, participants were more likely to ask and learn from human compared to robot. And the same pattern was found with robot. So after having evidence about the accuracy of human and robot being always accurate and human being always wrong, participants were more likely to ask and learn from robot than human. So to conclude, I'm going to summarize this second study. So to conclude, consistent with previous research, our sample also demonstrated the uncanny. Our sample also experienced the uncanny valley, because around 40 to 60 to 70% those ambiguous images, participants' liking rate went down. And adults were also more likely to ask questions and learn information from human without any evidence of the accuracy of the informant. So without knowing whether a human or robot is accurate or not, adults tend to prefer asking questions and learn from human. And lastly, when accurate information was available, adults updated their responses and they choose to ask and learn from an accurate informant, regardless of human or robot. And so they were utilizing those accuracy cues to guide their learning. So together, these findings speaks to the perceptual challenge that uh, that we face with human-like robots, and humans' default assumptions about human and robots, and how this assumption change with the presence of evidence on accuracy. So there are our preliminary findings, and data collection and analysis are still ongoing. So we have some other questions that we plan to look at. For example, how perception and learning are linked, and how naturalistic exposure to technology influence robot perception and learning from robots. Also, we are preparing to conduct this experiment with young children to examine the age differences in perception and learning. And also, since these studies are based on videos, we plan to conduct follow-up experiments that allow live interactions with robots and examine how these experiences influence perception and learning from robots. So last but not the least, I want to thank our team, funding sources, and participants. So that's the end of my talk, and I will open up the floor for questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Choi. So we already have one question on the queue, and want to just remind our audience you're welcome to send your questions directly through the Q&A. You can just click that button at the bottom of your screen, and we will be happy to engage your questions. Or if you have other responses or comments, we'd be happy to hear those. The first question that we have concerns the origin and relevance of the term uncanny valley, which connotes the idea that humanoid robots are somehow creepy. Can you tell us about the origin of this term and its use?
Yes, it's based on an earlier study conducted with the adults, and it was based on the shape of the response patterns. It looks like the valley, right? And then people feel these machines, not necessarily robots, but the machines that have machine-like feature, but also get similar to humans, and then these sort of perceptual features elicit some negative emotion and responses, and their response, it's not like they don't like machine. If it's a pure machine, their affinity rating is not that low, but if it's sort of getting similar to humans, they start to feel this creepy feeling that they start to feel uncomfortable. So and yes, so that's sort of, and then the researchers sort of find out this pattern, that that the shape of the deep that exists in their perception, and then they start to call it as a uncanny valley.
Thanks. Well, that's very helpful to hear. So, another question. Did all experiments in your work use childlike faces? And if so, do you think that uh, adult faces might be more trusted and equally or not equally? So, whether robot or human?
Yeah, that's a great question. We thought about this um, question when we designed the stimuli.
Mhm.
So, and a lot of the study actually, there are studies looking at the similar question, creating morphed images using human face and then other robot or sort of more machine-like features, face with more machine-like features. So we wanted to sort of differentiate, and also we wanted to test the kids. So we feel like children will feel more um, close to those images. So we intentionally picked the child images, but I think that's an empirical question whether adult faces would be more trustworthy. And there are some existing research comparing children and adults, and then adult children and adult informants, a child and adult informants, and then those studies found that um, children tend to trust adults more than their peers. So it's possible that maybe, um, and then those studies haven't really looked at their trustworthiness or their liking, but it's more about their trust related to child versus adult informant. So I'm not 100% sure whether that will be related to their liking, but I think it's an interesting question worthy of exploration.
Thanks. And so we have another question that's very grateful for your talk. Thanks you for sharing. And is asking, is the robot study more about robots for entertainment,
Mhm.
education, or health settings? And how might learning be similar or different once you change the context?
Yeah, that's also a great question. Here, our intention was uh, more toward learning, but the study with the media, some of the findings suggest that the viewers' beliefs about media also guide their exploration and learning. So if you think television is for fun, not for learning, they tend to put less effort in learning that information. And then some studies found differences in their performance. So if the experimenter tell them you're going to be tested on the content that you will be viewing through television, children tend to put more mental effort in processing that information, and actually they learn and retain more information. So it's possible that the way that we introduce robots, maybe it's just for fun or it's something for learning, may shift viewers' beliefs about these technological tools, and it may differentially influence their learning. So, but I think with the robot, I think it's an open question, and there are some mixed finding with even with television. So I think it's an open question how viewers and like depending on their age and experiences, how they think about this digital media and those media beliefs will guide their way that they use media and eventually influence their learning. I think it's an important question to look at.
All right. Thanks again. We have another question from the audience that's thanking you for your talk and asking you about your use of the terms human like
Mhm.
robots versus humanoid robots. So, is this a conscious decision to try to distinguish between those two terms? Or do you see those different terms as being basically the same?
Um, yeah, here I think we was mainly based on the facial features. We didn't really manipulate other aspects of robots. So um, I've been using this term interchangeably in here, and the reason that we picked the human-like robot was based on the perceptual like sort of similarity. We want to emphasize that, and then we didn't really look at the other aspects of robots, maybe like gesture or the coding that goes behind it. So it was purely based on the the sort of perceptual aspect. So that's the reason that we use the human-like robots. And but I think it's an important question to think more about. Yes.
Thanks very much. And so, another question that emerges from your research, of course, is the larger role that these digital devices might play in children's learning.
Mm-hmm.
There has been an increase, particularly given the pandemic, and the amount of screen time that most people are getting, such as right now. Ordinarily, we might be meeting in person, but we're
Right.
on a screen now in order to do what we do. And children are using
Mm-hmm.
screens, even if they have a human teacher,
Mm-hmm.
it is frequently over a screen in order to deal with social distancing requirements. I'm wondering, has the experience of the pandemic in any
Right.
way impacted or shaped
Mm-hmm.
some of the research questions
Right.
that you and your
Mm-hmm.
team are pursuing?
Yes, we definitely see an increase and started to see the changes in the reports and studies too increase in the screen time after COVID. And it also changes um, screen exposure for all ages, like even young children. And then we have like recommendation for children under two. Um, American Academy of Pediatrics say maybe no screen time unless it's video chat, but it's drastically changing. And so we are thinking that maybe there are differences in how children perceive this media, use this media, and also not only the amount of time, but the way that they utilize the media could have changed. The video chat feature, we have been using it, but now it's becoming our part of our daily lives. So it's not only the quantity, but the how the media has been used in what context have been drastically shifting because of COVID, and this may change children's perception about this technology and potentially what kind of information that they um, attain from those experiences. So my earlier work suggests that if the children have higher exposure to interactive technology, they tend to learn better from screen in the lab-based task. So maybe the increased exposure could be helpful in children to process information from the screen and transfer that information to real life problem setting because they are practicing that more often. But how that would relate it to their other sort of social, emotional developments and their building relationship with other people, would that change? I think that's also an open question. Um, yes.
And there was another element of your work you were talking about earlier that seems to make a very important distinction
Mm-hmm.
that I just want to make sure our audience is picking
Mm-hmm.
up on. So, a lot of the debate for years over children's
Mm-hmm.
exposure to screen time has basically not made a distinction in at least at a popular level.
Mm-hmm.
There's not been a distinction between what you are
Mm-hmm.
noting as
Right.
interactive
Mm-hmm.
screen time versus non-interactive screen
Right.
time. So watching
Mm-hmm.
television, for
Right.
example,
Mm-hmm.
versus using an iPad where
Mm-hmm.
someone's actually touching things or
Mm-hmm.
responding to
Mm-hmm.
gestures. So, am I understanding you correctly that that is actually a major factor that makes an important difference in the outcomes?
Yes.
Is the screen time
Mm-hmm.
interactive? Is it passive?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes. Yes. So um, that's a great point. And then also when American Academy of Pediatrics makes the original recommendation, they didn't make that distinction. The
Mhm.
screen time considered as like a whole, but actually people started to recognize there are different like sort of factors that goes into it. It's the content of media and also how the media is designed, whether it's interactive or not, and also how those are used in what context. And those are sort of important factor to consider when we provide recommendations for parents and educator. So more recent recommendation includes those aspects. So if it is interactive, like video chat, maybe it's encouraged, but it also has to be used with parents. So parents are using these tools to interact with the children, not just let the children sit there and play. Maybe there are some benefit of interactive media, but those are actually less than what they gain from the real interaction with parents. So they recommend interactive media may be good for young children than non-interactive media. But the most important thing is the parents use those tools to engage and interact with their children.
Thank you. Another question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think the content matters? So, for example,
Mm-hmm.
will there be a difference when the goal is to teach about history
Mm-hmm.
versus, say, probability theory, which can often seem more abstract?
Um, yeah, the answer to that question is yes. And then actually, a lot of research findings speak to that. So, if we use media to show violent content versus educational content or entertainment content, there are big differences. And particularly, like preschoolers and up, they can they can pay attention and learn from digital media and like television as well as interactive media. So contents become even more important for those children because they can learn like negative lessons as well. So um, so a lot of the studies focusing on preschoolers and the older children look at how to design good media content to teach intended lesson and how to sort of reduce harms by removing some removing like inappropriate content or unnecessarily like violent content targeted at specific age group.
So, another question has to do with
Mhm.
audience for your research. There are certainly lots of stakeholders, entities of interest that are involved in technology.
Mhm.
You mentioned the children themselves who are subjects of research in your lab, parents who are
Mhm.
very interested and concerned about the impact of digital technologies on their children. There are healthcare professionals. So, you mentioned uh, the children's doctors who
Mhm.
have paid close attention to the results of research to try to give guidelines.
Mhm.
There are also larger policy groups that might be involved in setting technical standards or trying to understand the impact of the research and its relationship on in design. There are the manufacturers who
Mhm.
create this content.
Mhm.
I'm remembering the Mattel Corporation, for example, came out with device that was supposed to monitor children and sort of be an AI
Mhm.
enabled digital babysitter. And they spent a lot of money and years developing this product that would actually use a camera
Mhm.
to understand what a child was doing, so that a parent could say to the child, do your homework or maybe watch 30 minutes of TV and turn off the TV. And so the AI could actually see and observe what the child was doing, and if it was watching television for more than half an hour,
Right.
it could notify the parent, or it could
Mhm.
tell the child, well, now it's time to turn off the TV. And what they found is when they developed the technology, and whenever they put this into a focus group research to see how parents responded, most parents were so alarmed
Mhm.
over what they thought of as a privacy invasion
Mhm. Right.
that this company would have an AI enabled camera that was going to watch their
Mhm.
children. And so they actually ended up just terminating the product after
Right.
spending all the money on the
Mhm.
research to develop it.
Mhm.
But the point is that there are a lot of different entities that are involved in this chain of processes and events
Right.
from developing a product to its use. Who do you see as being the most important audiences for the research that you're conducting?
I think everybody the mentioned. So we typically mention like implications of our work, definitely parents. And I am particularly interested in educational use of media. So
Hmm.
oftentimes I include educators and like pediatricians because they provide recommendation like screen time and appropriate screen use for children, for parents with their children. So and then we all often also think about media professionals when we study these effects, how to design the content or program that best serve our children. So in the related to earlier question, content is very important, and also the well-designed educational programs incorporate thoughtful like curriculums targeted at particular age group. So some of the research findings involving young children, we are thinking about informing those media professional and producers who can utilize those knowledge to create the product that serve children. And with this project in particular, we were thinking about like engineer, like robotic like engineers who may be interested in how human perceive and run from robots, and some of the elements we could maybe manipulate, like maybe robots like facial expressions to make it more likable, and if those are related to the learning or other aspects of human robot interactions, we may be able to inform those stakeholders as well. Yep.
Oh, that's terrific. It's very important to have this research at the level of design, at the level of
Mhm.
the parents understanding what is going to be most helpful in
Mhm.
supporting positive outcomes for their children and people who are in education, of course. And so it's really fascinating to see those different intersections coming together in your work. We have just a few minutes left, so if anyone in the audience would like to pose any other questions, you can do so. Again, if you're joining us in the Zoom webinar, you can just click the Q&A button. If you're joining us through the YouTube Live link, you can send those questions through the comment section of YouTube, and we can relay those to our guest, Dr. Choi. So another question comes to mind with your work, and that is, given the kinds of interdisciplinary
Mhm.
research that you've been conducting in your lab, I'm wondering if you could say what you think has been the most important factor in being able to shape an interdisciplinary team, because you need people who have different kinds of expertise to do this work.
Right.
You're bringing together things such as pedagogy
Mhm.
and the technical dimensions of digital technology, as well as child
Mhm.
development and other factors. So what has helped you to be successful in putting together a team, and what advice would you give to others who are interested in collaborative research or team science and are thinking about how to move forward in pursuing a similar kind of project?
Yeah, I think having an interesting question that we can solve together, that we can like study together, I think it's the most important thing. So I think I also and also have like meeting to have open discussions and to develop those ideas have been very fruitful for me. So I was definitely interested in like robot because it's a interactive technology, but also can incorporate some social aspects. But without having the connection, I wouldn't be able to study this question. So I've been collaborating with my colleagues in School of Engineering and also psychology, who does brain imaging. So and then study um, emotional development. So actually, the uncanny valley or facial perception is a new area to me. So mine is more about learning from technology. So some of them was like sort of learning experience. I need to like read more paper and then immerse myself on those topics. And um, but yeah, it's been also really fun to be able to realize these like research ideas and create stimuli by collaborating like grad students and faculty in engineering to and then also my students were joining those activities to like take the video and then edit it and then um, put together our online experiment, and we also like spend a lot of time warping those images, and I also didn't really know about those technique before, but through the collaboration I was able to like learn new skills and then shape our research questions together. So I think definitely an interesting questions to begin with, but have frequent meetings and interactions to develop the ideas together. Yeah, but I'm still new in the process, so I feel like I'm learning throughout these. Activities, but I'm looking forward to see how this project would evolve, and I'm excited to have um, experiments with children and robots and see how those live interactions will influence children's thinking and development.
Well, that's great. A couple of more comments and questions. One is an observation that children seem to enjoy the show Androids.
Mm-hmm.
There are various types of robots in the
Mm-hmm.
show, but children tend to gravitate toward PAL, the
Mm-hmm.
robot that is most human like.
Mm-hmm.
And so the
Mm-hmm.
person's asking if you might comment on this, what seems to be a trend of theirs being more of an attraction to the most human
Mm-hmm.
like robot in the show.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's also very relevant to the work that I presented. Maybe, I mean, also children have preference towards like book versus tablets. It's not always consistent, but when we look at younger children, sometimes they, if we give them an option, like, do you want to use tablet for drawing? Do you want to use like paper for drawing? And one of my study with my collaborators found that children, young children, the preschoolers, they and the toddlers, they prefer tablet over piece of paper. So um, there are some, like, it's not always consistent, but some studies show that children show some preference toward technology. So I think the human-like robot is could be like another different level. It's still along the line of technology, but have the other like human-like features, or that children are sort of familiar with. Like they have dolls and puppets and toys, and robot has those features as well. And
Mm.
then also other cool technological features in it. So it may help children to create sort of parasocial relationships with the robots, and thinking that they're like friends to them, and or so it's not just the tool. It could be maybe they may form some sort of social relationship with uh, those robots.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Another question. Do you have any sense of whether the effects of interactivity you found are primarily motivational, based on the effort given, or cognitive?
Right. So I think that's a great question. I haven't really explored like children's motivation and how the interactivity or having the agency would impact their learning through the motivation. But I think it's certainly possible. But I think the uh, current finding that we have sort of suggests is more cognitive. And then going back to the study that I mentioned, the general interactivity versus specific interactivity, if it's um, just about the motivation, we would expect the same pattern, like regardless of which type of interactivity we introduce. So I feel like it's more about supporting their uh, like attention by guiding their attention to the specific information. So which is more cognitive rather than motivational. But I think motivational could be a big piece. Whether I get feedback on my performance, and I can choose what I want to do. The playing an active role may not only bring the cognitive benefit, but also like motivational aspect as well. That's the area that hasn't tapped on in terms of my research agenda, but I'm definitely interested in a really important aspect when we understand children's learning from technology.
Yeah, no, that's enlightening.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. Well, listen, thank you so much, Dr. Choi, for sharing with us today the research that you're doing on children's learning using digital technologies and examining the interactivity versus the passive use of these devices, and how we can better understand how children develop and learn in order to support the most optimal developmental outcomes. This has been very exciting to see, and we've learned a lot. And thank you to everyone who joined us in our audience. We hope that you will join us again soon for another upcoming talk in our research colloquium series. Thanks again to everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.